Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask Elly, Intuitive Insights and Your Questions Answered. Today is May 25th, and you're listening to another episode. And if you're new to the podcast, I am your hostess, Elly Molina. I am an international intuitive psychic, educator, author, and the founder of Psy Kids, a magical place where children and their adults can tap into their inner magic and develop their intuitive and psychic abilities. I also offer psychic readings, which you can schedule online at my website, ellymolina.com. And I offer consulting programs. Two of my signature programs are Quantum Leaping and Mind Power Consulting. This is where you step into an alternate reality and create the life that you say you want. It's rapid, it works, and people who have gone through this program have had amazing and wonderful experiences. Well, today I want to talk to you a little bit about astrology before I introduce my exciting guest. Astrologically, we're heading towards another new moon on Monday, May 30th. But before we get there, Sunday, May 29th, you want to circle your calendar for some magical work. On Sunday, Mars will conjunct Jupiter in Aries, and this is a wonderful day to get into the new in the world. So if you want to create something new, this is the day to get it recorded. This is the day to begin to step into it. We're midpoint of the calendar year and prime time to get dreams created as you step into a new reality. Another day that I always circle on my calendar is May 27th. That is the birthday of my favorite tarot reader, Madam Lenormand, who we will speak about shortly. And today I am super excited to have K Greer with us. Mary is an independent scholar, writer, teacher, and professional tarot consultant who's been studying and reading tarot for over 50 years. She has an MA in English literature and first taught tarot at a Florida university in 1974. And she continued to teach it for 11 years at a college in San Francisco. She's the author of 12 books on tarot and on magic, and was the first to write about reading tarot for oneself. She pioneered what is called the right method, readings that are interactive, transformational, and empowering. She's featured at most tarot conferences in the United States and abroad, and Mary travels the world teaching tarot and Lenormand cartomancy. And so Mary also offers amazing courses and classes online through globalspiritualstudies.com. And that link will be available on the podcast in the descriptions and on YouTube. Well, today we're going to talk about Mary and her abilities as a historian and a tarot reader. And at the same time, we're going to be talking about Madame Lenormand. So hi, Mary. I'm so honored to have you here with me and to introduce you to our listeners today. Hi, Mary, and thank you for being here today and being our guest on Ask Elly Intuitive Insights and Your Questions Answered. Like I said before, I am so honored that you are here to share your knowledge about the tarot and about Madame Lenormand and what you're doing now, and your years of research and all of your work. Can we talk just a little bit about how you got started in this? So many of my listeners aren't familiar with your work just yet, but they will be. So.
Well, it all started, of course, with tarot. And that was back in 1967, Christmas, where my best friend, I went over to her house, of course, Christmas morning, so we could share the presents that we got. And she had gotten Eden Gray's book, the tarot revealed for Christmas, but no cards.
Oh.
So that was one of the very few books that was available at the time, and especially a book that put it in very normal kind of language that anybody could understand, rather than being very esoteric. It was focused on reading with simple meanings, very direct. But I looked at that book and said, this is it, because I was in college. I had just been learning about Jungian material, Carl Jung's psychology, and Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And I'm looking at these cards and going, that's what these are all about.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to see how the archetypes were working in someone's personal life, I realized that that's what a reading was. It was showing where these archetypes were turning up. So I went on my first spiritual quest to find a tarot deck. I was living in Tampa, Florida, and somebody, I went asking, where am I going to find these? Someone told me about a metaphysical bookstore on the other side of town. I borrowed a funky car that had a hole underneath the brake so that you could see the ground underneath.
Oh, goodness.
You had to double clutch it in order to get from one gear to another. It was like, I'm mentioning this because it was this sense of a quest where I had to overcome all of these obstacles to finally arrive at my very first metaphysical bookstore.
Wow.
So it was early 68 by this time. And lo and behold, they had a couple of tarot decks. I bought one for me and one for my friend. That I decided that first year that someday I would teach it as an academic subject in college, and that someday I would write a book about it. You know, when I got to be 60 or 70 years old and I had a lifetime's wisdom.
Yeah. And you've written, if you the information that I have is up to date, Mary, you have 12 books already, if not more. Is that correct? Did something come out since did I miss one?
No, I think that's pretty much it. There's one or two that are co-written with people, but at least one of those is included in the 12.
Yeah. Wow. And then I was reading, and if anybody wants to read more about your bio, I will suggest that people go over to Stephen or Stephen D. Winnick and read about your bio, because he does mention all of the awards that you've won over the years and about your books and just all of the wonderful things that you've accomplished in this field of bringing tarot to I'm going to say to the layperson, you know, basically to all of us, so that it's not this mysterious thing that we have to go and pay a tarot reader or something to tell us about our fortune, even though that's kind of fun still too. You know, I do like that. I do readings myself, but I just don't know the cards. So one of the things that I know you've got a fascinating bio, and we're going to come back and circle. But for the people who are listening today, what I'd like to do is share how I found you and why I found you. So it was 2017, and I had a dream, and you probably have had, I'm assuming everybody has these, but who knows? I was dreaming and I heard a voice. It was one of those voices of like Darth Vader kind of deep, deep voice. And it was, your name is Sybil. And I'm like, what? My name is not Sybil. I don't know what you, and I woke up and I was almost frightened. Okay. I was like, what are you talking about? My name is Sybil. So then I said, you know, kind of that, I grabbed my phone and I looked up, what does Sybil mean? And because I didn't really know, honestly, and if I did know, I had forgotten. So Sybil is one of the prophets. She's like a psychic. She's a psychic. And it's like, then all of a sudden, right underneath the word Sybil, I saw the name Madam Lenormand. So now I'm fascinated. I'm starting to read about her, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is a really, really fascinating woman. And I read that she's a seamstress, and I'm reading about her bio. Obviously, you know, I'm reading about her bio from you. Okay. But that was before, you know, I made the connection of, oh, let me invite Mary to the podcast. This is 2017. I'd never even thought of having a podcast. So I say to myself, wow, this is really cool. I want to know more about this Madame Lenormand. And all of a sudden, the next day, such weird stuff, Mary, my car keys are missing. And I'm digging in my bag and I don't know where they are. And I put my hand into my bag and I prick my finger on a sewing needle in my own handbag. Now, how the heck a sewing needle got in my handbag, I have no clue because I wasn't sewing anything. I wasn't doing anything with pins and needles. And it really freaked me out. And then I found my keys also. But I called my friend and I told her this story. And then I said, do you think it has something to do with Madam Lenormand and that I need to honor her and that I need to talk about her? And so I said to myself, yeah, I think I do. So then I wrote a blog. I did some research based on Wikipedia and on your work. And then I wrote a blog on her. And each year I have been doing something to honor her for her birthday as I made this declaration that I was going to do it. And now May 27th is her birthday. And then here I said, oh my God, let me see if Mary will talk about Lenormand cards and tarot and even Madame Lenormand. And then we'll circle back and talk about you.
Well, actually, to add to the synchronicity, Carl Jung said that things that happen at the same time often have a meaningful connection. And we can find those when there's something that sort of alerts us to it. And you mentioned Sybil. Yesterday, I was in a class with someone else who was doing an in-depth study of the Greater Trumps. It's the first tarot novel that was written in 1932, I think. And one of the main characters was called Sybil in this tarot book. So it all comes back around to the Sybil's. There were actually many of them in the ancient days that gave prophecies. Yeah, I think that's really important. And the seamstress, and of course, the weaving the web is very much part of the whole goddess tradition. And I connect the Sybil's with kind of a they're kind of goddess archetypes, even though they're not technically goddesses. So they've got the connection to that. So, weaving the web and connecting all of these different things together. So yeah, The Greater Trumps is a fabulous book on the tarot and its magic. And this Sybil character in there is the one who's most closely in touch with divine spirit in its love manifestation. So an elderly woman who kind of guides people very gently through their various problems and issues. So,
oh my God. Well, you know, it's going to be my next book now. You know this, right? Okay.
Oh, good.
I'm actually going to go order it as soon as we get off our podcast.
Yeah, it's a rather strange book, and I've read it at least 6 times, and every time I get it at a new level. On the surface, it seems like it's kind of like, but as you get to know the tarot more and more deeply, it becomes more meaningful. And magic, it's all about tarot and magic.
Oh, so, I love this. Oh, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, yeah, Madam Lenormand, happy birthday. I forgot to figure out how old she would have been. We don't know for sure whether she was born in 1772 or 1768. I would imagine it was probably the earlier date, just because people like to always see themselves as younger than they really are. But there's a lot of confusion about what her actual date is. Yeah, she was in a convent for a while, then got trained as a seamstress, then went to Paris, and then started her, and was taught when she was 14 while she was still at the convent. Somehow she had come across some gypsy women who did readings with cards and taught her how to do that. So it's supposed to come down from the gypsy tradition. The cards that we call Lenormand have nothing to do with her directly, except that they stole her name. And that happened a lot with people who became very famous, especially in fields like this, where when they died, they weren't important enough to have people go around correcting the story. So she died in 1843, and by 1845, 2 years later, a deck came out called the Lenormand deck. She did use cards, all different kinds of cards in her readings. So she
Okay.
would often have stacks of different kinds of fortune-telling cards, playing cards, even tarot cards on the table. And she would tell the client to shuffle the cards, cut them with her left hand. That's the first mention I've ever heard of cutting with your left hand, which became a tradition. And then to um, pull out a certain number of cards. And she would do that with many, many different decks, so that the table was probably filled with selections of cards from all these different decks. And that was one of the ways that she would tell someone's fortune. She read for
Wow.
Josephine, the wife of Napoleon, supposedly for Napoleon. That's more questionable. Robespierre, people during the and after the French Revolution.
Yeah. And
So amazing woman. Yeah.
right. And I know she was imprisoned, right? You had
Yeah.
mentioned that also, that she spent some time in prison.
At
And
least twice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Partly her fortune telling, and partly because she was also kind of semi-active in politics around bringing back a regency to France. And so, she was pretty active in that, or
And
at
we
least
don't,
later. Yeah.
and I have, so this is just a scientific question. Where were you able to get all of your information from? Because you are one of the few authors that have anything written in English, as far as I know.
There's other people who've done it. She herself wrote many books, like at least
Right.
6 or 8 books,
Mhm.
but they're all in French, and I don't read French. My friends who read French say it's painful going through them.
Oh,
Both the language is odd, it's very boring. She doesn't talk that much about her fortune telling. She doesn't really reveal any of her techniques, which of
mm.
course, all my friends, that's what we're looking for.
Right, right, exactly.
So she goes into the politics, she goes into life stories, about how she gets arrested at various times.
Mhm.
The rest of it is, very little known, except for all of these book and newspaper accounts
Mhm.
of people who had readings from her.
Right.
And we've got probably at least 10 or 12 of those, and there may be more out there.
Wow.
So the thing I find fascinating is that with somebody like her, where there's so much mystery about her life and who she really was and how she practiced, they're remarkably consistent in
Mhm.
telling the story of what happened when they went to see her.
Mhm.
So we do have a good view, not so much of her personally, but of the basic process. And that, not her inner techniques,
Right,
which is what we
right,
really want,
right. Mhm.
not her ideas about what cards meant. But people would go sometimes by appointment, or they would just show up. There would be a waiting room where there was usually several people waiting. An assistant who would then come in, tell them that they were waiting, and then would usher them into an inner sanctuary room that had cloths around it, would have all kinds of occult
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
in the room that gave the atmosphere. And these include things like stuffed crocodile,
Oh
an
God.
owl, stuffed
Mhm.
owl, skulls, just all that kind of crazy paraphernalia.
Mhm.
And then she was described as being small and not very attractive. As a matter of fact, sometimes people would go, a greasy hat on. And that was one of the favorite things that people in describing pejoratively readings will talk about: greasy cards, greasy clothing. So yeah, those
Interesting.
kinds of
Yeah.
comments that
Mhm.
she was rather ugly, and those were mostly by people who were coming to her when she was in her 60s.
Mhm.
And of
Mhm.
course, back then, being in your 60s meant that you had lived a pretty hard, long, hard life, and
Mm.
probably did not look as good as people in their 60s today. So
Probably. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. That's
yeah,
fascinating. Ah, I love it.
yeah.
Mary,
Mhm.
can you tell our listeners, they can't see this, but I have a little deck of
Yeah,
blue, these are the
yeah.
blue owl cards. And as
Uh-huh.
I just learned now from you that she did not create these, but they are been given her name. So,
Yeah.
I know that you do a course on reading this and
Mhm.
interpreting these cards. So if anyone were to just pick up a card and read, like, oh, well, I guess that's not meant. What about this one?
The bear.
There. Mhm,
Um, okay, so the bear is, of course, this big figure who's known for being very ferocious for protecting their young.
mhm,
So for most people, it's associated with the mother. There's are some people that associate it with the father. And ironically, the other side, or more contemporary view, in addition to mother, is people like policemen and soldiers, and people who are big, are fierce, are protective.
mhm,
It can also relate to money, stored money,
mhm.
because of course bears hibernate.
Hibernate.
It's like things put aside. And so you've got the fish card, which is fluid cash, cash that's
Mhm,
on
mhm,
hand,
mhm,
easily accessible. And then stored food is, or not food, but money is under the bear. So you've got mother, you've got officials that are by profession supposed to be protecting us,
mhm,
and
mhm,
you have stored money or finances. Those are the
mhm,
main things. There
mhm,
are people who add more contemporary meanings
mhm,
to it. One of the differences between tarot and Lenormand is that tarot is a symbol system. You project onto those symbols things that you associate with it.
mhm,
And so if you've got a dog in a tarot card, then you talk about, dog-like behavior, instinctual behavior. What's guiding you if the dog's running ahead of you, or if he's biting at you, how is he dogging you?
mhm,
Um, in Lenormand, there are set meanings.
mhm. I see.
There's some variation in it, but you stick, if there's a dog, well, there is a dog card. Let's, better example is the child card that shows a young child playing. And the child card basically means child or children,
Mhm,
new, young, innocent, naive. So those are the basic, oh, and play. It can be
mhm,
also play. So those are the basic meanings for it. But often, depending on the deck you have, the
mhm,
child card is often has a butterfly net and is going after a butterfly.
mhm.
Sometimes he's playing with a ring and other things. Well, I've seen people look at that card and start talking about the butterfly being transformation.
Mhm,
No, 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 no. You don't read the symbols on the card.
mhm,
So
mhm,
you wouldn't look and say, oh, that butterfly that he's trying to catch, the child's trying to catch, is significant for something that you're going after, or some dream that you have, or, like I said, transformation.
mhm,
So it's the set meaning of the child card. So
mhm.
that's one of the biggest differences. Another example is that there's a card called mice, and the core meaning of it is
Oh,
thievery.
I was just looking at that one. Say that at the mice here, number 23 on this deck. So, because I'm
Yes,
not sure all the decks are the same. So it's
yeah,
23 with the
they're
mice.
all, yeah, they're all numbered 23. And traditionally it is thievery, stealing, um, destruction of things, stuff getting dirty, being like when there's mouse droppings left around. So all
Mhm.
those kinds of things, gnawing away at something.
Right.
So
Can
those are
I?
the basic
Mhm,
meanings. But a lot of contemporary, there's so many hundreds, literally hundreds of new Lenormand decks where there's artists who do their own versions of these classic pictures. They love to make cute mice. Not all of them, but a great many of them do have mice playing, frolicking, looking so adorable. And one of the things I emphasize in all my classes is mice are not cute. Absolutely not cute. They're not playful. And so you can't read the image.
Right.
Or if you do read it, you're reading not a Lenormand style reading, you're using this deck of images for your own oracular intuitive reading, which is something else entirely.
So, yeah, because I have a question. I mean, like, I don't know the meanings of the Lenormand cards, but if I were looking at the mice, the first thing that I would go to immediately would be deceit and perhaps gossip, or deceit is where I would go first. And would that be one of her, would that be
not really. The gossip is birds. There's specific things. Deceit is the fox card.
Yeah.
So there's other cards that specifically mean those things. It's definitely thievery, or the farthest it goes off from that core idea is, gnawing away, eating away at something. And the idea of making stuff dirty, filthy, shit upon. So yeah, that's definitely what mice are. So the other thing that's important is that you don't read individual cards. Cards are read in relationship to each other. So it's kind of like a noun and an adjective, where you would say house, but I mean, house, what house? Whose house? What kind of condition is the house in? Is the house for sale? Is it a fancy house? Is it a cheapo house? That's the adjective. So it takes at least one other card, if not more.
Oh, so that like 3 cards to give us a story.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, can we do something fun? At least I think it's fun. Can I pull 3 cards and you create a story? Is that okay?
Yeah, well, you need to have a question. It can't be a yes/no question. It's possible to do yes/no answers, but that's not as that's trickier.
Oh, okay. How about this one? I got a question.
Okay.
What's next for me? Oh, listeners, don't you want to know? So
actually, that would be more like the full Lenormand spread, which is all 36 cards. We'll do it with 3 cards, but
let's just, we're playing.
That's normally what you would do with all 36 cards. You'd lay them all out.
All right, we're just going to play. We're just going to play.
Immediate next.
Immediate next. We're going to play. Okay, so I'm going to pull the 20. I'll show it to you. I'm pulling the 20.
So the garden.
All right, I'm going to give you the next 2. The garden. 8. Is this the tower? Looks like a radio tower to me. Can you see this?
No, it's the coffin. 8.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. A coffin. It's so interesting. Yeah. You know what it looks like to me? It looks like 5G.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. And then we have 11 over here. This
and 11, thing. Which is the whips.
Oh goodness, I don't like this reading, but okay, let's go for it.
It is a little bit difficult. The first card is a card for social interaction.
And don't hold back, okay? Don't hold back. Okay.
So I'll just briefly say the first one is garden, which is a social interaction and can be parties. It can be any kind of interaction. The 8th card, which is the coffin card, is the card on its left is ending. And the card on its right, at least in the version that I've got, the deck that I prefer to use, not all the decks have this cloth on top of the coffin. It closes off one side of the coffin and gives the sense that the other side is open for some kind of renewal. And then the card to the right, the next card is the whips card, which is and we've got two cards that are used as punishment devices
Mhm.
for whipping or spanking. Oh, what do you call it? The brush thing. Oh, can't remember the word
I
for it.
know, I
Anyway,
know.
yeah.
Flagging or something
Yeah.
like that, whatever. Mhm.
So it would, and this is a card. This 11 card is one of disagreements,
Mhm.
conflicts,
Mhm.
arguments,
Mhm.
um, and uh, also it's anytime things get heated, the idea that these are fast moving. When you're whipping, you're kind of whipping up energy. It can be a sexual card. But if you're not planning on a sexual interlude right immediately afterwards, then it's probably something else.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I would say that when you're talking about what comes next, so we're not talking past, present, future, we're talking about kind of a unit or sequence where you're closing yourself off from some kind of social interaction. Because of a disagreement, some kind of, seeing contrary. Um, and, that's basically what it is. We can see, because of the coffin card, the closed off side is by the social interaction.
Mhm.
And so it would suggest that one of the immediate things is going to be some kind of, um, um, yeah, wanting to stop um, a, a social interaction with we don't see any people here, we don't know who they are, but a disagreement with some kind of, and it could be even social media, although we don't have one of the cards that would indicate the media part. We do have the social part. Um, and we do have the idea of, because of an argument or disagreement, some kind of conversation going on. So I would say that because of the whips card being on the right, that you might be speaking out rather harshly to somebody whose opinion, or a group whose opinions you don't agree with, and don't want to share.
Ooh, okay.
So
I will keep
yeah,
that in check. So thank you, Mary. So
yeah,
when, if and when if that does come up, and it could even
yeah,
be perhaps in my personal life is what you're saying, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. So
We don't have an idea of where it
right,
is.
right. So look at my face all
Yeah,
flushed. Thank God they can't see me. Um,
yeah,
if this does, if this does come up in my personal
yeah,
life, I will pay extra careful attention
yeah,
to this and be mindful of this
yeah,
warning, so to
yeah.
speak. Oh, awesome.
So
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
don't know if it has anything to do with social media, but at its most extreme, it might be, blocking somebody or leading a group. That would be if it was in that context. If it's personal, then it would just be that you don't agree with a more social perspective, and so kind of turning away, walking away from that. But somehow, with the whips on the right, and the open side of the casket, you still have to get your last word in. You still have to kind of express how you disagree with whatever that is.
Oh, do you know me personally?
No, not before this. Now that we've done, that's one of the things with the Lenormand readings, especially when you read all 36 cards, the grand tableau, is you do feel like you've really gotten into somebody's personality.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It is true. I do enjoy getting the last word especially in family
Yeah.
arguments. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important to
Mhm.
me to be able to be the last
Yeah.
one who has the final say. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh God. Confessions on Ask Elly. Oh, Mary,
Oh,
that was so much fun. I know
yeah.
that you said you no longer do personal readings, correct? Is that true
Oh,
or?
I do them. I don't advertise them. So
Okay.
it's more people who know me, who've been my clients in the past.
Mhm.
That especially during COVID.
Right.
Um, I mean, I could do online readings, but I prefer in person. So for a while, we were doing readings on my porch. occasionally with, neighbors and friends.
But I was
And,
going to say, in case our listeners wanted to reach out and get a reading, is that something? Nah, not really. Sort of,
if
kind of.
it's something that they really, really are interested in my style reading and my way of reading, I do in general prefer doing tarot readings, and then I will use Lenormand if, like, at the end of the reading, somebody says, okay, I get the big picture and I get the lesson I need to be learning and my options, and I see how important these elements are, but is this going to work? And if they're insisting right at the end, I'll do what I said I wouldn't do with you earlier, which is yes, no reading with Lenormand, which I've been surprised at how accurate it can be. And it's just a very quick, it's like, okay, we've gone over the big picture. Let's get a sense of what, the immediate needs you have to know whether you take a breath and let go or what.
Right. Oh, this is fascinating. Mary, do you have a favorite deck that you use? Do you?
Of Lenormand?
No, just in general. We're moving away from her. She has her
okay.
time, but so I want to thank you, for sharing all about her. But I also want to, you have such a rich background and you have so much knowledge in tarot and the history of tarot and everything involved in it. So I would like to cover some of that, and we still have time. So can you share a little bit about what your decks are, how you work, and a little bit about your research? Just
Well, I try not to collect decks, but I've been doing this for 54 years now, and so I've got several thousand decks. And there's probably only about maybe 20 that I go to with some regularity. And by that, I might mean a couple of times a year that I pick a particular deck out of those 20. Usually I'll try out a new deck, but then I put it aside and tend to forget it unless it's one that really draws me back. So the deck that I use most often is the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which was originally created in 1909. Came out in December of 1909 and then 1910.
Can I interrupt you? Was that the deck that you first discovered back? Was that one of your first decks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was and
that's your
the
baby.
Eden Gray book is about that deck, and that's the deck that I bought at that first bookstore. And it's also the deck that, if you have core meanings for the cards, even though they can have infinite meanings, there's still certain core sense for each card. And I find that if people who know nothing about tarot describe the card, talk about it, tell me what they think the figures are feeling and what they feel that they're doing, that the words that they use are often those core words. And so over and over again, people who've never seen a tarot deck before. So I go back to that again and again, because I know that what people are, I work interactively with my clients. I work in more of a therapeutic kind of way. And so I'm guiding them through what they see, the stories that they would tell about the cards that come up. And we look at those as metaphors for things that are going on in their lives. So these cards are going to, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is going to be the most closely aligned, as far as I've found, with their own words and the core meanings of the cards. So I can work on two levels. I can look at the whole spread and see the overall pattern and direction that it's going, and how cards are connected through correspondences, astrological associations, Kabbalistic associations, and so on. So that helps me see a pattern that relates very well with the words and stories that they've told and the way that they've seen the cards. With a lot of other decks, it can be very good as a projective device, but what they see in the cards may be very, very, very different than what the standard meanings of the cards are. So I'm just fascinated by the fact that so many people get the standard meanings more from this Rider-Waite-Smith deck than they do from almost any other deck.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so you don't even, basically the lesson in that is that with that deck, and so many of our contemporary decks are based on that deck. So I should add those in with it. It doesn't have to be the original Rider-Waite-Smith. It can be one that's kind of closely based on it. But it means that you don't really have to sit down and memorize meanings. With Lenormand, you really have to memorize your core meanings. With tarot, you can use them, you can tell stories about them. You can then go to the book and see how close you were. And slowly over time, you kind of build these associations that are both personal as well as things that you find in the book that can expand on that or give you deeper insights into what your situation was that you were describing. Yeah.
Wow. The good thing about Lenormand is that there are only 36 cards. Is that what you said?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah,
so
and you don't read reversals, so it's just 36 very core basic meanings. No, you can work with about 3 to 5 meanings for each of single words or very short phrase for each of the cards, and you've got them down.
All right. Question.
Yeah.
Is the book, did you write, is there a book on the Madame Lenormand meanings?
There's several of them, and most of them are quite good. There's an excellent one by Kathleen Matthews. I don't remember the names of the books, and then one by Raina George. Raina's is probably more practical oriented in terms of really concrete meanings. She does add some modern meanings, but first she gives you the classic ones. And then she gives you some ones that she's added because she's been reading the Lenormand deck for over 50 years. She first learned in Lebanon when she was a child, and from an aunt who read them, and has been reading them consistently ever since, a lot. And so she has added some more modern
Very cool.
associations.
Yeah. Like a 5G tower.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, I do trust her because I know she still relies primarily on the traditional core meanings. So they come out of that rather than coming out of a pretty picture. Whereas pretty pictures are everything in tarot.
Right. Oh my goodness. How exciting. What a lesson. Okay, I want to, is there anything that you want to share about what you're doing now? Because otherwise I'm going to start telling people where they can really get a lot of information on your work. So is there something that you want to share about yourself and what you're doing right now? Yeah.
Well, primarily that after COVID, or we're still on the tail of it, but we're going to be having our annual classes at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. That's a big New Age summer camp that's in upstate New York, and people come from all over the world normally. But
when are you going to be there?
We're going to be there in July. There's 2 sessions. The first one is a weekend. It's called Masters of Tarot. And that's July 22nd to 24th. And it's me, Rachel Pollack, who's one of the great luminaries in tarot. She and I have been teaching this together for 30 years. And we bring in other teachers who are very well known in the field. So this year there'll be Jenna Matlin, who has a wonderful it's not a podcast, but it's a regular program online. Nancy Hendrickson, who does ancestral tarot, looking at ancestral patterns, whether you know who your ancestors are or not, using tarot. And T. Susan Chang, who is an expert both in tarot correspondences and how to use them, but also Jungian psychology, working with symbols and projection. She's really amazing. All 3 of them are absolutely incredibly amazing.
Yeah, and you'll be there too. So
and me and
all
Rachel.
of you will. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely incredible.
And then We do follow it with a 5-day workshop that follows immediately on that, and there's a discount if you do both. And that's the Wisdom of the Tarot, and that's the course that Rachel and I have been teaching together for over 30 years.
Wait, that's
So
going to be an entire, I'm
5
interrupting. That's
days,
an
5
entire
days.
5 days up at
Yeah.
Omega. Wow.
July
Okay.
24th. So it's Sunday evening to Friday morning, the 29th.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and that's amazing. People who came for the masters and didn't realize that we were doing the other one have signed up on the spot, or they've been complaining, why didn't we know? So
Yeah,
hopefully they're
yeah.
going to be back this year.
Yeah. Well, I was just at Omega in September, and what was I going to say? So the grounds are beautiful, and everybody who's listening, if anybody wants to come, you know, by all means, it's going to be a beautiful experience for sure. Just first of all, being in your presence and other great tarot readers and learning all about this. But then the grounds are beautiful also, and the food's interesting. Mm-hmm.
There's a lake, and they're being very careful about safety for people. So they make sure that there's opportunities for people to be as spread out as they want or need to be.
Yeah. Awesome. This is exciting. I want to also say that your work is people can't get to the Omega Institute, or the tickets are all, because it is, you know, it's not an unlimited place. They do, you know, I mean, I stayed there. I don't know if everybody stays there, or people stay in hotels and come back, or they stay at bed
Most
and
people
breakfasts.
try to stay there.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I know that I stayed there when we were at the International Remote Viewing Conference back in September. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was, you know, we stayed there. But what was I going to say? Oh, if anybody's interested in learning more about your courses, and even taking an online course, that you have all of these wonderful courses at the and I'm going, like I said, I'm going to put the links on the podcast and on my YouTube channel, and it's the globalspiritualstudies.com, and that you've got your classes there. And I mean, I was looking at this and I could get lost in there for hours, Mary, hours. It's such a wealth of information. So I do want to thank you, and I want to be respectful of your time. And so if there's anything that you want to add, because this has been like a big delight. I feel like a child in the candy shop, and learning about all of these wonderful things with tarot from you. And if there's anything that you want to share to our listeners before we go.
Mainly, I think that the cards help wake you up to the messages that we get every day in all kinds of ways. And so in a sense, they become living figures that can talk to us and relate to us, and we begin seeing, you know, situations in our life. It's not a one-way street, that sometimes we are in a situation, we recognize where we are through the cards, which can help give us a deeper level of meaning to the experience.
So this leads me to, thank you. This leads me to another question. So if somebody were to wake up in the morning and feel kind of, let's say funky, and they pulled out a deck, I'm just using this because this is the deck I've got here. And then they shuffled them and they said, okay, tell me what I need to know for today. And then they pull out the 3 cards and look them up in the, like Madam Lenormand or something. Then we could get like an idea of like what I need to know for the day.
Yes. Now there's one additional thing you need to do, and that's you pull the cards. You can look them up in the books if you want. You should also write your first impressions. So actually first pull the cards and write first impressions, then look them up in the book, and write also what is actually going on in your life, and then come back to it. So the next morning when you're going to pull your next 3 cards, write what actually happened that day. And for big things, look at those again, you know, a couple of weeks later, several months later, a year later. And with the first reading I did with my ex-husband who I was with for 21 years, I found the reading again. I put it someplace where I knew I would find it someday. And I looked at the whole thing again and got another whole level of meaning. This teaches you additionally what the cards mean. Because as you start seeing where you lie to yourself and where you're actually willing to face things.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to make the reading say, oh, everything's going to be okay, and it isn't, then you go, well, why was I so concerned with not facing the problem that was shown here? Or the other way, why do I keep looking at the cards, even if they're just slightly negative, as something really bad, when it was a chance for me to, strengthen ability by facing something difficult?
Mhm.
So you learn about yourself. And
Mhm.
then if you're reading for other people, you start hearing where they're lying to themselves, or where they're stuck in something, and you start recognizing that. So even as a reader for other people, you start seeing the human patterns that we have,
Mhm.
of relating to the news and information that we get from things like the cards.
Ah, fascinating. So
Yeah.
fascinating. Oh, I'm so
Well,
excited. I'm going to go get myself a book and another deck. What deck
oh
do
yeah.
you have for Lenormand? What deck do you use?
I use variations on the Dondorf one. So, oh, I can't remember what these are called. These I had to order from Europe.
Mhm.
Oh, um, I'd have to send you a message, because I'm
Okay.
terrible at remembering all the
I'm just
names of
curious. Well,
things.
you've got 1,000 cards,
Yeah.
so I don't expect you to.
I actually collect, because antique tarot decks were way out of my price range from forever. But when I got into Lenormand, it was still relatively unknown. So I actually have a small but very nice collection of antique decks.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
yeah, so that was something that I was very lucky to be able to get on. They're now expensive.
No,
Um,
beautiful.
but yeah,
Okay, Mary, I want
yes,
to thank you so much for being here on the
yeah.
podcast today, and let our listeners know they can find all the links at the end of the podcast and on YouTube. And so thank you, thank you, thank you for
Yeah,
being here and with us today.
thank you.